Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome on this afternoon to this From Lab to Market session, where we're kicking off a new series, a new training series, but also a new series of case studies prepared by the European Patent Office. And we, as the European IP Helpdesk, are glad to continue our collaboration, which we started last year, bringing to you a fresh set of case studies with a particular focus on cancer and novelties, inventions, innovations that help fight cancer. As we all know, and as is written in the Europe's Beating Cancer Plan, which was introduced in 2021, as there's the first sentence, which I found quite fitting, and it says, "Cancer concerns us all in one way or the other." And as we've seen in a very recent press release issued by the European Commission on this year's World Health Cancer Day, where they said that cancer is still the second cause of mortality in the EU after circulatory diseases. So it's worldwide a major burden, and inventions and innovations in this field are desperately needed to improve the well-being of patients around the world and make this all improve, let's say, the situation for patients around the world. But of course, also it has become a major market, and SMEs play a fundamental role in this market because they are often the very first to come up with these inventions, and especially also the labs where this new research happens plays a significant role when it comes to developing new drugs, new diagnostic approaches, new therapies, and SMEs and research labs are working closely together in that field. So really, cancer and fighting cancer has been a major priority of the European Union, with different actions, different flagships, different initiatives. And again, this is why it's so vital for new research outcomes to actually make the way from the labs to the market. And this is what we try to illustrate, and what the European Patent Office tries to illustrate with those 3 case studies. Before we dive right in, and I'll give you a quick outlook on what this session is going to be about. We will start with an overview on recent developments in EU knowledge valorization policies, followed by an introduction, a very brief one, to the EPO's innovation case studies, because as mentioned initially, there is already a set of insightful and inspiring case studies, and these 3 additional ones really add to it. And then we move to 2 cases, and we're glad that 2 of the experts who've teamed up with the EPO to write those case studies are joining us today here, alongside this great lineup of speakers that we have, to give us a first glimpse into what the cases are actually about, introducing the innovative companies to us, but specifically also the inventors and their journey in bringing these new technologies or invention solutions to the market. And we're rounding off this program with a quick update for you all on the unitary patent system, and then, as said, upcoming activities, because this is the kickoff to a new training series, and there are additional activities which might be of interest for you as well. Before we dive right in, just a very practical remark. As you see, we have a fully packed program, so maybe we will not be able to answer a wealth of questions, but still feel free to do so and use the chat window that you see on the toolbar on your right-hand side to type in your questions. We will try to get back to you directly after the individual talks, and if not, we will make sure to come back and follow up with those questions after the event in the follow-up email. The session is being recorded. Of course, none of the participants are to be seen, but of course we want to make sure that we can share the recording with people who are not able to join us here today, and use this as an additional resource. And as said, there will be a follow-up to this event, so you will also receive the slides afterwards. And with that, I'm very happy to pass the floor on to our first speaker, who is Yanis Zagias. He is Deputy Head of the Unit for Valorization Policies and Intellectual Property Rights of the European Commission. And we're now looking forward to getting an update on the most recent developments in EU knowledge valorization policies. Yanis, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Thank you very much for this kind invitation. It's really a pleasure to be once again in the series From Lab to Market. And you said it very correctly in the beginning that whatever we try to do in research and innovation and with the valorization policies is exactly that, to be able to take research results that can benefit society in total. And the particular series that we have now, that it's about health, particularly cancer, is very important. And let me remind everybody that it's one of the EU missions under this framework programming period. And we try to be able to deliver as much as possible from the lab to the market to society. So I would like to give you a brief overview of what we are doing with knowledge valorization and the whole policy of knowledge valorization, how we can create more value from the research and innovation investments. To give an overview of where we stand currently and what we are preparing and what you will be you will see coming up at the end of this year and the beginning of the next. So as you probably know, you have seen this slide again. Under the new European Research Area policy, we were mandated to create guiding principles for knowledge valorization. We wanted to create new principles to replace the 2008 old recommendations that was only about IPR in the academic institutions, and also to see how the landscape has changed and what we can do about it, and how we can include as broadly as possible all the research and innovation actors in order to be able to have principles that will allow us to create more value from research and innovation. And of course, in the ERA documents and the ERA Pact, we have also the creation, together with the code, of codes of practice, practical documents that can help practitioners on their day-to-day business on a hands-on approach. And there are some animations, so there. So we managed to have the guiding principles for knowledge valorization as a council recommendation. So that makes it a property of the member states. And it's actually what we expect from the member states, to take this property, take this ownership, and try to apply it and implement it inside their national environments. And as I said, we made codes of practice on intellectual asset management and on standardization, that I will say a bit more further on, which are commission recommendations, and all of the codes of practice that we intend to do under the guiding principles for knowledge valorization. So the plan is to create at least one tool, one code of practice for every valorization channel that we have. It will be with the form of the commission recommendation. Sorry. So first, the code of practice on the management of intellectual assets for knowledge valorization. I think that this is a code that some of you sorry, that went too fast. Some of you have already seen the code or even participated in the community of practice. And sorry, I'm having some troubles with, sorry. I think I found a way. Sorry for the small glitch. So back in the right slide. So the code of practice on intellectual asset management was the first code that was announced under European Research Area. And the idea is to create a code that will help the management, the efficient management of the intellectual assets that we generate by research and innovation activities. The plan that was adopted at that moment was to create a community of practice, because we wanted an all-inclusive and bottom-up approach. So we wanted to have a co-creation, to give a co-creation opportunity to practitioners to come together and together with the Commission create this code of practice. So 200 members created this community of practice. We had a series of exchanges and valuable recommendations coming from the community. And then we reached the level that we have identified the best practices and best recommendations to be inside the code. The code was passing through a consultation with the ERA forum, but also in the service consultation to finally be adopted as Commission recommendation in 1st of March this year. An overview of the content is that we have a code that addresses basically the management of intellectual assets from the beginning of the concept of an idea of a research innovation, let's say project or activity, up to the final reaching the market. And in order to do that, we provide recommendations on how to establish an effective strategy for managing intellectual assets, how you can manage the assets in joint research activities, also in international context, how to clarify ownership, how to make the right choices about the control and the protection of your assets, and then how you can move that to the next stage, which can reach the market, which is pretty much the subject of today's event. The same way we created a code of practice on standardization. For us, intellectual property, intellectual asset management, and standardization are two key channels for valorization. So it's two channels that can certainly generate value from the research and innovation activities. So standardization, probably the ones of you that have seen or participated in Horizon projects also in the past in FP7 or Horizon 2020, you have seen that there were specific parts in the grant agreement dealing with intellectual property. But the same was about standardization activities. And there was always a long-standing reporting template for standardization activities, which a lot of projects actually have put data. And it's something that we certainly wanted to look closer. So we had to create something about standardization in the research and innovation activities. And coming from the European standardization strategy, which acknowledge that there is an unexploited potential of pre-normative research work. So there is a lot of things, in other words, to be done to bring these two strands of work together, the standardization activities and the research and innovation activities, and not just have them in parallel, but have them crossing in order to create standards that can benefit industry, society, the market. So we started in a different way here because we did a survey, as I said, to the numerous projects that reported standardization activities. Then we had the scoping study addressing the community. And then we also engaged standards development organizations and practitioners in this scoping study. This scoping study created something like a working group, which actually worked a lot on making the first draft of the code, which we published in 2022. And then we had an extensive public sector consultation in order to make the code fit for purpose and finally get it adopted as a Commission recommendation, again, 1st of March 2023. So these two codes are existing, are there, they can be used, they can be taken up, they can help everyone that engages themselves into the path from the lab to market. So what else we're trying to do with this code is, as I said, to create more links between R&D activities and standardization, provide guidance at three different major actors inside this exploitation and valorization path, which is organizations, researchers, innovations, business, and policy makers. And there are specific recommendations addressing all different levels. And as I said, these codes are available, they can be used, they can be taken up, and there are more to come. So quickly, this is a slide. Of course, you will receive you will see the recording, but also the slide deck. These are more information about the codes and the guiding principles for knowledge valorization. So I invite everybody to download the codes, see them, start using them. And without further delay, going a bit further in what we are doing in order to increase the potential of implementation of the guiding principles and make people aware of what knowledge valorization is. We have the awareness raising campaign that we have launched at the end of 2022, and we had recently the first event being held in Prague. So the first national event, because under the awareness raising campaign, we have a Tour de Capital roadshow that goes from in every European capital to spread the word, to communicate further, to disseminate further the guiding principles for knowledge valorization and the tools that we have available. So the first event took place in Prague. We have Vilnius coming up and Madrid in June. We have also stakeholder events that will be held most probably in Brussels, the first one being in October this year in Brussels. And the idea is that we bring forward topics of national, regional, stakeholder interests. So it's not a commission event, it's a national event that addresses national needs on knowledge valorization. And this is the message we try to pass. And also try to collect activities that nationally, regionally, or locally are being taken up by the member states in order to populate our knowledge of what is happening on the ground for the implementation of knowledge valorization. And now, as I said before, we didn't start with only the 2 codes of practice that were announced in ERA, but based on documents, policy documents, and council conclusions all these years, we were being mandated to create more codes of practice in order to populate with tools all the valorization channels that we have identified back in 2021. And one of the important valorization channels is industry-academia collaboration, and another one is how we engage citizens for knowledge valorization. So these very important valorization channels deserve their own codes of practice. So the process for them is exactly the same. We want to have communities of practice because we want the same bottom-up approach and the co-creation approach in order to bring the stakeholders together and write together the code of practice and the recommendations that will be included. It started with a call of expression of interest, the establishment of the community of practice, and then community will work until June 2023 in a laborious way in order to produce the first draft that then will be refined and then go into consultation in autumn 2023, and then internal consultation with the Commission services for final adoption in the beginning of 2024. And that's for both codes, the same plan exactly. So first, the community of practice on industry academia collaboration. It is very important for us that we have these 2. I mean, it's not the first time that you see that Commission is doing something for industry academia collaboration. What is new this time is that we believe that there are novel approaches, new ways of addressing this issue, and seeing it also from the side of the business, from the side of the industry, rather than only from the side of academia and research. So there are several new ways that we can engage these communities together. The industry academia collaboration can take many different forms, and I think that we need an inclusive code, a code that can address most of these issues, most of these types of collaboration in one single document that could be useful for anyone that wants to engage themselves into that kind of collaboration. And of course, the community of practice was created to create this code, and the overall objective is, again, under the guiding principles, to implement the guiding principles, to help the communities implement the guiding principles, to have concrete recommendations between industry academia collaboration to facilitate all these exchanges, and to, as I said, to see these novel interactive models of collaboration, see digital platforms that might exist, the co-creation models. And of course, this is keeping in mind that we're addressing the whole R&I ecosystem, all research and innovation actors, not only academia, not only research organizations, but also everyone which is involved into this ecosystem. So the community of practice, as I said, is to bring valuable knowledge, valid recommendations, best practices to help create the subjects and the topics that we would like to include in that code, and we'll draft the first code of practice, which will be the outcome of the community by the end of June. And then the community of practice for the industry academic collaboration has more than 210 participants, 25 member states and 11 other countries are represented. What you see here is the type of organizations of the participants, with the majority being universities and public research organizations, but we are very happy to see that there are a lot of SMEs also. We have industry representatives, we have national authorities as well. And the idea of the work plan, as I said before, and you see it here more clearly in this slide, is how we intend to have the community working, and how the community also, after delivering, because here you see the plan until the end of June, which will be the final date for contribution of the community of practice to the Commission. We would like the community to continue working, because it can always be a checkpoint of the things that will be generated after the consultation phase. So we would like to go back to the communities later this year and share the document as this document, share the code as the code has been developed at that point. So these are the list of areas that have been identified. Of course, I'm just giving you an overview and being aware of the time. It is important that you take a bit of time and see, and if possible, follow the developments of this community of practice. You will see also the digital platforms, the role of the intermediaries. You see the management of intellectual assets, which is again an important element in this kind of industry academia collaboration. So these are the list of areas that have been identified, and most probably most of them will last until the end as chapters within the code that will receive recommendations from the members of the community. Now, for the community of practice on citizen engagement for knowledge valorization, as I said, for us it's very important that we engage citizens in making value from research and innovation. And citizens can come in from different points of view. The most important is that they are the ones that sit at the same time as the ones that define the needs for the research innovation. They are the users of the results, and they're also the ones that can also participate in the process. So citizen engagement is very important, and we believe that there is more value there, and that's why we want to create a code to bring this up and address it in its totality if possible. Again, the same objectives as the other community. We want to support the implementation of the guiding principles. We want to provide concrete recommendations how to engage citizens for knowledge valorization. And there are new ways also to empower the engagement and accelerate how the citizens actually uptake these solutions coming up from the research and innovation. And of course, these are, again, for everyone in the ecosystem that they would like to engage with citizens, to have at least a document that can tell them the what and the how. And here is the role of the community of practice. It's exactly the same role as the other community of practice, but there is one difference comparing with other community. In this community of practice, we have a core group. From the beginning, when we announced the expression of interest online, we asked people that wanted to participate in the community, but at the same time wanted to participate in a smaller group of people that could actually be the pen holders that will collect the input of the community, process this input, and actually be the ones that will draft the recommendations representing the rest of the community. And we established the core group from the beginning. We're meeting with the core group at least one day before the plenary meetings of the community, and the core group is the one actually that mediates between the numerous members of the community of practice with the Commission. And here are the numbers. We have 125 people joining. We have 21 member states and 6 other countries. And these are the types of organizations that we have. As you see, again, the majority here are universities, and then civil societies, NGOs, and we have private companies, we have research organizations, we have umbrella associations, and of course, you can find into the other, you can find even social enterprises, you can have independent people, you have also museums represented. The code should address citizens, researchers, policymakers, businesses, intermediaries, and other, which shows exactly what we said, that the code should address the whole R&I ecosystem. And here, when it comes to other, we see that it can address also NGOs, funding organizations, RTOs, and other entities in the quadruple and quadruple helix framework, for example. That's the work plan. Still, one more day to provide inputs for the ones that participate in the community, provide inputs to areas and subtopics until tomorrow. That's why you see it in red. And again, at the end of June, the community will deliver to the Commission the first draft of the code. And this is the web page that you can find dedicated information about these two communities. It is in the knowledge valorization platform, which I assume that everybody knows by now. and you can always use this place that you can also exchange with us and also submit best practices. Last thing I have to mention is that recently we had the EU Knowledge Valorization Week. I'm not sure how many of you have the chance to see the Valorization Week. This year we have themed days: sustainability, intellectual asset management, and leaders academic collaboration. And final day was training and skills. And it was a great success because it demonstrated how knowledge valorization actually happens, how it takes place, and how important it is. And it showed the way of the things that we can do forward. There are so many things that we believe that are excellent examples that can be replicated at European, national, regional, or local levels. And with this, I conclude my presentation here. I'm sorry if I've taken a bit of more time. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Yanis, for providing this very concise overview, and don't worry about the 3 minutes, and also for reminding us of this significant broadening of scope in terms of including the diverse range of actors, as you mentioned. I mean, it won't make our task easier, but certainly it will benefit the whole ecosystem to look at it at this more broadening scope. And then also, I think, not only with regard to the ecosystem, but also actors, but also with it, looking at knowledge and the definition of knowledge and what are actually the assets that we're talking about. I think it's a great achievement with the guiding principles, but also with the code to broaden the scope and understanding of the different forms of knowledge as well, and then also putting intellectual property rights into perspective. And as you just said, I think it's all about making relatable for people what is knowledge valorization actually about, what are the steps that we need to take. And this is, so you've been setting the scene perfectly for Ilya now, our next speaker, introducing the new 3 case studies that actually reflect also the broad varieties of actors and sectors as well that we have here in Europe. Okay, Ilya, over to you.
Hi, Stephanie, and thank you for the introduction. Okay, good. So let me first give you an overview how it actually started. So a bit of a history and motivation before I show you what is the, let's say, the series of so-called innovation case studies is about, and what is the newest contribution. The whole idea of creating case studies within the EPO came actually more than 5 years ago, when we discussed that there's actually a missing link. So what we usually had in the past, or at least that was my impression, we had information about how to manage IP. At the same time, from a personal experience, but also from at universities and different schools, you have the information how to build up and develop a business. And what we were missing is a bit of a link of the two. So what is the overlap of let's say, having an IP strategy and to know how to manage IP, and at the same time, how to bring it together with the business strategy of the company, having the different options of how to develop a business model, what would be the business plan, and so on, and how does the business grow over time with all its options, and how can IP support it? So bringing those aspects together, this is the main goal of the case studies, so the innovation case study series that we have developed. And our main, let's say, main goal was also to create something which is similar to the Harvard case studies, which many of you might be aware of. And we were convinced that something like this is missing for the IP sector, and therefore we came up with a business. Adding to this motivation, of course, it's also important to show you maybe a few numbers why actually knowing how to manage IP and IP management is very important for small and medium-sized enterprises, or how we like to call them, it's rather a high-growth technology businesses, because we know that most of the SME actually want to become larger companies and to grow. So, I mean, calling them SMEs for a long time is I think just too passive, and many of the companies would not want to identify themselves as SMEs, but rather as high growth technology businesses. So what you see on this slide, and in this corner, especially the diagram that is shown here, shows you the share of patent application that comes and this is the number for 2022 from small, medium enterprises and academia, such as universities or public research organizations, because they know that from academia, they do not commercialize patent inventions themselves, but rather do it through startups, through licensing to SMEs in many cases. And as you can see, if you add up the numbers, we have over 1/4 of patent applications that we receive per year originate from small, medium-sized enterprises or academia, which is, as I explained, is related to SMEs and startups as well. So first of all, it's a huge part of the cake that we receive. It originates from SMEs. And if you consider that the propensity to patents, so the number of patents for larger companies much higher than from SMEs. So if you just look at the distribution of applicants, that number even increases to over 50%. So more than every second user of the patent system per year that comes to us is actually an SME. So SMEs are very important for us, and SMEs, as you can see, are very important actors in the innovation ecosystem. However, one should not forget that if you take the other perspective and look at what's the share of SMEs that are actually using IP rights in general and patents in particular, you see it's this line here. So basically less than 1% of SMEs in Europe are actually using patents. And if you look at those that are using European patents, it's less than 0.3%. So again, just to put it into perspective, there's only a small selected share of SMEs that actually rely on IP rights and patents in particular. However, and now I'm going back to the right-hand side of the slides. SMEs that do use IP rights and patent in particular perform better than those SMEs that do not use them. And as you can see, and this is one of the results from our study from 2021 in cooperation with the UIPO, the average difference, controlling for different factors, between a SME using IP rights and an SME in Europe not using IP rights is 68% in terms of revenue per employee. But what also became obvious when we did the analysis, we've tried to understand whether we can identify those SMEs that have a kind of an understanding of how to use IP rights properly. And an indicator, which I think is quite conservative one, is SMEs that are using a combination of patents, trademark, and designs, because we argue that if an SME owns all three types of registered IP rights, then it's very likely that they know what those IP rights are for, and they know what are the benefits of the different IP rights. And it shows clearly that those SMEs that know how to use IP, they know how to manage it, they are even able to generate an even higher revenue per employee, so which means they're even more successful. And to give another perspective, because you can say, okay, so the revenue is higher, but this is not a high growth company, so they're not growing faster. Well, we did a similar exercise where we looked at the probability that the company can grow, and indeed, the analysis shows that if a small company has IP rights, the odds of the company to grow or even to grow at a relatively high rate, so increasing the number of employees by more than 10% for 3 consecutive years, it increases if the company has IP right, and increases even more if our indicator for IP management and let's say knowledge about the IP system and the different IP rights, in that case, the odds of successful growth increases even more. And this is the second stream of motivation that we have for the project. It means that SMEs, they should not only own IP for the sakes of owning it, but they should to know how to use it and how to use it to their benefit. And to the benefit, we define it as to know how the IP strategy fits the business strategy, to understand what IP offers as, let's say, options to pivot, for example, to change the business model, to go different commercialization routes, and also how to manage IP to have a kind of sustainable development of an IP portfolio and sustainable exploitation of the IP portfolio. This is what the series is all about. So far, we have created over 30 case studies, so this is what the series contains, on European SMEs, how they create strategic value from patents and other IP rights, because we are aware that patents per se, it's only one part and very limited part of the whole picture. There are trade secrets, there are trademarks, there are design rights, and everything has to play together. And so we make sure that those points are also discussed in the case studies and treated accordingly. And what we know, and maybe you are aware as well, the different scenarios are very diverse in the sense that there's not one ideal scenario or one case how patents can be used and how they can be used for business development, for technology transfer, and so on. But we are aware that every case is diverse, which means we needed to create many different cases. First of all, to show all the different routes that exist, being different in terms of industry, in terms of geography, in terms of business model, in terms of technology, in terms of the setting of the founder teams, and so on. To show all the IP strategies, a good practice IP strategy and IP management. Here you have the link to all the case studies, and as a kind of a macro level, we divided it in 3 types. So we have the SME case studies, where we look into the life of one company, so SME being as a first idea in the lab at university to the final success on the market and also the future business development. So that would be the SME case study part of the whole series, but also technology transfer, knowing that usually, especially when it comes to academia, there is a whole technology platform that is being developed, which can be the offspring for many different exploitation times, be it through licensing or startups, or even cooperation with larger companies, and of course also division by industry. So for example, the university can decide that for one market, we cooperate with one startup and grant them the rights only for that market. For example, if you think additive manufacturing only for plastics, then another company received the rights to commercialize in the dental area. And again, this is a way how technology can be transferred from academia and be an offspring from different commercialization routes. So this is the theme of the technology transfer case studies. And the most recent addition is the so-called high growth technology case studies, which is the outcome of a forum. So around 4 times a year, we offer live case studies where we invite founders to present the case in 45 minutes, and we have a plenary of different experts who provide different perspectives on the case studies and also a possibility to ask questions. So in total, we have over 30 case studies. And just to present you only the geographical overview, we know that we are in, say, one continent, but at the same time, we know that there are peculiarities in every country. So it was important to have a very broad geographical scope. So this is the overview of the SME case studies. You can see 11, and now we have 12 different countries. Same for technology transfer case studies. As you can see, we have new blue dots here. So we have many countries where you can find a case studies, and of course also from the forum, which are the live case studies divided in licensing team, build to sell, growth financing, open innovation. And just to do a bit of a marketing, the next one will take place on the 29th of June about build to sell. So how to prepare a company for a successful exit, but you can find it on our website, of course. And basically, what are the different use cases? Because in a way, when designing the project and the series, we are of course thinking about how people, especially you, could use it. First of all, for awareness raising, just to show that patents are used and they are used to bring products and services on the market, which is very important and the main purpose of the patent system as far as I see it. Then, of course, for self-paced learning, so please have a look at the case studies, and we hope that they are, let's say, self-sufficient in the sense that you can read them and have a full understanding without additional help needed. And we've tried to highlight all the key messages and all the parts and explain all the parts that need more explanation. And of course, as a new training material, and this is where we are very happy to cooperate with the European IP Helpdesk, which we also done in the past, especially for the technology transfer case studies, which we, as Stephanie already said, which in our view was a quite successful series of events. But of course, also for creating a network of experts and business decision makers, and two of them, especially on the expert sides, we have invited to this event John and Adela, whom we consider as part of our network, which is a very, very important benefit of the whole case study projects. And of course, we know that policy is changing, and there are, let's say, new possibilities, such as the unitary patent, which will start on the 1st of June. But here we have a colleague from the EPO who will give you a better overview of what actually means. And we've tried to incorporate that point. So the logic behind why companies should use the unitary patent, or how they could benefit from it, we have tried to incorporate into the case studies and to highlight that information as well. So it's not only the legal side, but also the business side of the unitary patent, which you will find in the case study explained. So long story short, I'm sorry. Here are the new additions. So one, we have put into the SME case study part, which is Derma Medical, which will be presented by John. It's a company in the area of cancer diagnostics, as you will see, which I think is very interesting, and founded by young students. We have Oncomark, an Irish company, which will not be presented today, but also in the area of cancer diagnostics. And again, you can see here what is the main product, but also how we would, let's say, categorize the case study. So it's a university spin-off with a company acquisition in it. But please, it's all published, so please have a look at the case study. And I think this one would also be covered in one of the future events with the European IP Helpdesk. And last but not least, OncoQR. But I think Stephanie and Adela will tell us more about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ilya. And with that, we pass right on to Adela, telling us a little bit more about OncoQR. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Stephanie. So I would like to present the first case study from the new series that is called OncoQR. OncoQR is a company that Celia, I think, already mentioned, is active in the field of cancer immunotherapies. My name is Adela Dvořáková, and I work currently for the European Research Executive Agency. And I have co-authored this case study together with Bowman Hayden from the Center for Intellectual Property. So at the beginning, let's focus a little bit on the technology itself. So the technology that is being developed by OncoQR is called the specific total immune remodulation. It's a little bit complicated and long name, but in short, we can call it STIR. So it's the STIR technology. And STIR is basically a platform technology that serves as a basis for development of immunotherapy vaccines against cancer. So here in the picture, you can see what the technology actually looks like at a molecular level. It is composed basically of two modules. There is the first module that we can see here that OncoQR calls the warhead. So the warhead is the, let's say, generic module of the technology. So it's always the same, it does not change. And it has the function of delivering the module 2, which is an immunogen, to specific cells of the immune system. And like this, it basically, it provokes and stimulates a targeted immune system reaction. And the module 2, that's a specific module that can actually change. The immunogen is basically an antigen, so it's a kind of protein that is targeting a specific disease. And depending on the composition of the immunogen, you can then create different kinds of vaccines for different kinds of diseases. So that's the beauty of this technology, that it always has kind of this generic part, that's always the same. And depending on the composition of the second part, you can create many different types of vaccines targeting different types of cancers, but also, for example, allergies. So it has multiple, let's say, use possibilities. And OncoCure actually realized this very early on, and they also got a proof of this possibility to apply this technology in many fields early on. So we can see in the timeline that the origin of the technology goes back somewhere to 2006, where the first patent was filed by the main inventor, that is Gerd Mude. And in 2010, he joined forces with the second co-founder, that is Christoph Langer, and they started their first startup company as Target Therapeutics and started to basically develop the technology together and worked towards the preclinical trials that are necessary then to get to for the clinical phases and finally getting the regulatory approval. And already in 2013, they actually successfully passed the preclinical trials for one of their products. So that's the vaccine TYG100 that targets gastrointestinal cancer. But they also passed preclinical trials for another product in the field of allergies. So that's what I mentioned before, that they really early on got to prove that this technology really works, not only for cancer, but also for allergies and potentially also for other diseases. And on the basis of this, they decided to spin off another company, and that is our OncoCure. And since then, they have been basically developing two different businesses for two different applications, and that is as Target for the allergy field and OncoCure for the field of cancer. In the timeline, you can also see several other important events. We see that they have also done preclinical trials for another product, OQR200, that targets the breast cancer. They've concluded several licensing agreements, the first one in 2014. The last one, the most recent one, is in 2022. So basically since the year 2010, when they joined forces together, they have been pursuing the R&D in this way, supported by licensing and pursuing different commercialization paths for different products. Their business model is built around a platform. So this modularity that I described at the beginning actually allowed them to create a platform-based business model. So the basis of the platform is this generic part of the technology, the warhead, and plus, of course, combined with some additional know-how, data, and so on. And this allows them to use this platform for development of different kinds of products. And that's a strategy that is very interesting, especially in biotech, where the time to market is extremely long. So normally it takes many years to get the preclinical trials, and then there are normally 3 phases of clinical trials. Each phase takes several years. So the time to market is extremely long. And this platform-based model is particularly interesting for this reason, because it allows the company to actually bridge this very long gap between the start of the company and the moment when the product enters the market and can actually bring some revenues. In between, this platform model actually allows the company to license out the platform for different applications and get revenues to fund the R&D. The IP strategy of OncoCure is basically protecting the basic technology with a strong patent portfolio. So they protect the main elements of the warhead and the connector that connects the warhead with the immunogen. But they combine it also with trade secrets. So they use a smart combination of patent protection and trade secrets. And they also file patents for products. That's something that would not be completely necessary because, of course, every product incorporates the basic technology. That means every product is already protected by the patent portfolio that protects the warhead. But of course, it's an interesting add-on, let's say, because it allows them to extend the patent protection of single products as well. And this IP strategy allows them to pursue their own R&D, while at the same time do out-licensing and form different kinds of collaborations for product development. So just to wrap up, what are the main advantages of this platform-based business model in biotech? That is that it allows to multiply the pathways towards product commercialization, and it allows the company to pursue its own R&D while gaining revenues through licensing, and it also allows to save the patenting costs. In this slide, we can see the structure that was enabled by this platform-based model. We see the company as Target Therapeutics. That was the first one. As Target owns two basic patents, the platform patent 1 and 2, and it out-licenses the two patents exclusively for the use in oncology to OncoCure. OncoCure then owns the third platform patent, and it also develops its own product, OQR200. And OncoCure then further licenses out these three patents for specific use for the gastrointestinal cancer. It out-licenses it to TYG Oncology, where it actually also has a share. So this is a kind of mixed collaboration model based on out-licensing and getting shares in the third company. And TYG then further out-licenses these patents to Apollomics. So Apollomics is actually, that's a US-based company that is currently bringing the TYG 100 product to the clinical phase 1 trials. And at the same time, OncoCure is licensing out the three patents for another specific use to a company that hasn't been disclosed yet. So you can see that, that the platform has enabled them to create a kind of complex structure and create these different commercialization paths. Some takeaways related to what I just mentioned would be, first of all, I think this is a very good example. So OncoCure is a good example of how the creation of a platform can actually be very beneficial for companies in the biotech area. Because as I said, it takes many, many years that the company has to, let's say, survive, and also it has to get a lot of financing, to pursue the R&D, and the platform actually allows them to do all that. So to bridge the very, very long gap and get sufficient revenues to pursue own R&D. And another takeaway that is interesting to mention, that's the complementarity of IP rights. So we can see on the way how the warhead is protected that that smart combination of patents and trade secrets actually allows a better protection against infringement. So it's not either or, let's say, but combining in a smart way patent protection with trade secrets can offer a better protection against infringement and potentially also extend the protection or IP protection of the technology as such. Another interesting aspect of this case study is licensing. So the platform has enabled OncoCure to create three different types of licenses that they offer to other companies. The most interesting one and the most important one for sure is the target by target platform license. So they license out the platform on an exclusive basis for the use in a specific application. So let's say I've mentioned, for example, TYG gets the platform, so the right to use the platform for development of a vaccine that targets gastrointestinal cancer. So this is the model that they are using. Every company can use the platform for a specific application, so targeting a specific disease. Then they have product licenses. It's also possible to actually license in a complete product from OncoCure. And finally, they have research licenses that are non-commercial. So the objective of these licenses is not to bring in revenues or develop a product, but rather to get more evidence or data about the platform and maybe improve the warhead. The licensing agreements offered by OncoCure are generally exclusive, but what is quite interesting is that they combine this exclusivity with a kind of element of openness, let's say. So what they do is that in every license that they give to other companies, they include a clause which gives other companies the right to use all the improvements on the warhead made by other users of the platform. So if any user of the platform, whether it is a licensee or a target or OncoCure, if any of them makes any improvement on the warhead that is a little bit substantial, then all the other users of the platform have the right to use it in a non-competing field. And another interesting aspect of the licensing agreement, I think that's also important to mention, is that their licenses are not purely patent licenses, but they also include any secret know-how or data or information that is necessary to be able to actually produce the vaccine, and support for manufacturing. So they are not purely patent licenses, but they are kind of comprehensive technology transfer agreements. Key takeaways related to licenses, I would say, would be one takeaway is what I just mentioned, and that is that patents are indeed very important for technology transfer. But if the licensing agreement includes not only the patents, but also some additional secret know-how and support for upscaling of the production, it brings benefits to both parties, and actually it increases the value of the agreement, because of course the licensee himself wants to have as much information as possible to be able to produce the vaccine, but also for the licensor, for OncoCure in this case, it is actually very beneficial that the licensee has all this information, because what OncoCure actually wants to achieve is that one of the products finally reaches the market. So it's also in their own interest to support the licensees in, let's say, being as efficient as possible. And another takeaway that I think is worth mentioning is the aspect of the back licenses. So this system where the licensing agreement includes the right to use the improvements made by other users can actually increase the value of the platform technology. It's a way how to enhance the value of the platform itself. And last aspect that I would like to mention in relation to this case study, that is financing. So OncoCure has been able to leverage actually their IP in a very remarkable way, because they were able to fund all the preclinical trials with their own means. So they gained some research grants, and they had a lot of licensing revenues, and only on the basis of this they were actually able to fund the whole preclinical phase, and that's actually quite remarkable. Then there would be other options. One option that would be worth considering in this case would be engaging venture capitalists, which on the other hand is a drawback that it entails a little bit of loss of autonomy. And another option that would be, I would say, a natural step for a company like OncoCure in this at this stage, that would be collaboration with big pharma. Which actually is something that was and is considered by OncoCure, but in the case of this technology, so in this specific case, there was a drawback, and that was that the big pharma companies actually required that the technology is even more mature. So they required more proofs that this technology actually works, and that's because this technology is, let's say, it's very novel. It's very different. So this warhead is really something very special, and more evidence, let's say, is required to be able to enter collaborations with big pharma companies. But for all these four options, IP plays a major role. So for research grants, it was extremely important for OncoCure to have the first patent. For licensing, that goes without saying. For engaging VCs and striking a win-win deal, it's also very important to have a strong patent portfolio, and the same is the case with the big pharma companies. Two takeaways to highlight in respect to financing. One thing that I think that is very well illustrated on this case is that when we look, I will go back, when we look back, at these 4 basic options that OncoCure would have to attract funding and to finance their R&D, I think we can see that it's quite obvious on this case that companies should always consider in which stage it currently is. So for every stage, there is an appropriate source of financing. Research grants are perfect at the beginning. So OncoCure got some pre-seed financing where they didn't even have to contribute with their own funds. So at the beginning, research funds research grants are great. Licensing, of course. Collaboration with big pharma company, we can see on this case that would not be really possible right at the beginning. So the company has to have already a certain level of maturity. And when it comes to VCs, there's also a kind of window of opportunity. So that would be one takeaway also from this case study, that involving VCs is also not the best idea right at the beginning. But one should not also lose that opportunity, because when it's then too late, it might be also difficult for the company to strike a win-win deal. So for VCs, there is also a window of opportunity. It should be after you get the proof of concept, but before, let's say, your patents are about to expire. So one should always consider in which stage we are and what would be the appropriate source of financing. And another takeaway, and that is something that OncoCure has done very well, that they established an advisory board that was composed or is composed of renowned scientists in the field and also of investors. And that's something that is also a good strategy for startups and small companies in particular, because such an advisory board can give directions and help the company to kind of navigate through all the options. And finally, to finish my presentation, I would like to give just a brief outlook. So currently, the company has gone through several preclinical trials. So they have the data from preclinical trials in monkeys. And currently, they have 3 pathways towards clinical phase 1 trials ongoing. One is for their own product, OQR200, against the breast cancer. They have this more complex collaboration model for the gastrointestinal cancer. And they are also licensing out to a company that I say is not yet disclosed. So they have three different pathways, so three possibilities how to get the products to the market. And that's with this I would like to finish my presentation. I think that this is a great example of how IP can actually help the company to create different options. It's absolutely clear that without IP they would not be able to get any of these 3 options. So IP was actually the main enabler for them to attract funding, to license out, to form collaborations, and only thanks to IP they have these different pathways towards commercialization. So that's one of the main, let's say, functions of IP, to create options for the business. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adela. And it's really a very multi-layered story indeed. In the interest of time, because I could have come up with a number of questions, I'm not seeing questions currently. So in the interest of time and not to keep John waiting so much longer, I think we pass on, but we will have the chance to talk a little bit more and more extensively about the case on the 12th of June. I will repeat myself. I will repeat the invitation later on and provide you with a link as well. But thank you for now, Adela, for giving us a very good flavor of what's in it in this
Thank
case.
you.
And then with that, over to you, John.
So thank you, Stephanie. I'll try and run through this quite quickly so that we don't detain people. So this is the title of the case study on skin cancer, a new dimension to skin cancer diagnosis. And it was developed by a company in France, which I'll elaborate on now in a moment. That's me. I'm a chemist originally, worked my first part of my career in research and development and product development. and then moved away from the laboratory and became very interested in intellectual property. And for the past 20 years or more, I've been specializing in intellectual property, and more recently, the past 10 years, coaching companies and universities on IP and writing a lot of publications about intellectual property. So this is the new product we're looking at. It's an invention, which is a medical device for real-time, and it's non-invasive diagnosis of skin lesions. And I must emphasize that because I'll give you an insight to traditional methods for diagnosing cancer, skin cancer. So this is a non-invasive diagnosis of skin cancer and other skin conditions. As you can see, it's a handheld probe here, so it just comes to the surface of the skin, and through illumination of the skin, there's magnification here in this device, which can scan and screen through the skin and produce an image on the screen behind for the clinician who's doing the examination. So where did the technology come from? Well, it originated from 3 partner institutions in France, Institut d'Optique, Graduate School Palaiseau in France near Paris, also Paris-Saclay University, and the Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique, CNRS. And these partner institutions govern a if you like, a program for developing innovation, masters in innovation for graduate students here at the graduate school. And arising from that research in the graduate school, there came a new technology, which I will go into now in a bit more detail. So what was the commercialization route for this handheld probe, which I've shown you in the previous slide? Well, it was to create a spin-out, and through that spin-out, try and commercialize this technology. The spin-out is called Dame Medical, and it was formed by 3 people from the graduate school. One is a professor there, and the other 2 were graduate students. The graduate students did a lot of background research on this technology before deciding how it could be commercialized. And in discussions then with their professor, they identified clinical applications in dermatology as being the best product market fit for this research that the professor had been working on for many years. And in dermatology, we know that cancer is skin cancer is a very dangerous cancer and on the rise in recent years. And so the applications of this handheld probe are primarily focused on skin pathologies, and particularly in identifying early stage skin cancer. So the technology, it's quite a mouthful. It's called line field confocal optical coherence tomography. And what does this mean? Well, it combines and adapts 2 state-of-the-art technologies, one called optical coherence tomography, and that's a scanning technology which is used by ophthalmologists, particularly in the detection of pathologies in the eye. And the second technology that existed and still exists is called confocal microscopy. Now, this is a high-resolution imaging microscopic technique used in research for examination of biological samples. And so Dame Medical have combined these 2 technologies to come up with a completely new technology, which they call the LCOCT. So this new technology, it's a new method for real-time imaging. So again, a non-invasive application, which creates a 2-dimensional image of a lesion or pathology in the skin. And the visualization and examination can go down to a depth of 500 micrometers. So that's where the dermis sits. Underneath our epidermis, we then have another layer called the dermis, and that's where the pathologies arise, and that's where you need to go with your visualization technology in order to scan what's going on there. Now, the advantage that this new technology has over the existing technologies there, the optical coherence tomography, is that they all do the same thing. They can scan and visualize deep within the skin. But with this new technology, they can get to a higher resolution at the single cell level. And that's where you need to be looking in order to identify any rise in the development of abnormal cells. So they can detect malignant tumors very early, which are often missed by visual inspection, because when you go to your dermatologist, the initial inspection really is by the eye to have a look and see what's going on the surface of your skin. And then the dermatologist will often use a dermoscope to look more deeply at the site. But you can often miss changes in lesions at that stage if you're not going deeper into the dermis to have a look and see what's going on. And so this technology then avoids complex and risky excision of biopsies, because if a dermatologist is uncertain as to what's going on with a particular lesion that he or she is looking at, they may often then refer the patient for a biopsy, so an excision of a piece of skin, which is taken to the laboratory for examination and to see what's going on deeper within the skin. And I'll show you then exactly what they look at when they do these biopsies. So what we're looking at here is a comparison. On the top line, I have highlighted two black and white images. And these are the LC-OCT scan, if you like, of a tissue. And on the bottom line, this is the traditional method of examining skin. It's a histology slides that we're looking at here in the two pink slides. So what happens in a biopsy, in a physical biopsy where the dermatologist takes a slice of the tissue, is that that tissue is sent away to the laboratory where it's embedded in a piece of wax. It's then cut into very thin slices in the order of a couple of micrometers, so really thin slices, placed on a microscope slide and then stained to give this coloring so that the histologist, when examining under a microscope, can actually see the cells, the individual cells, through this staining. And a very well-trained histologist then is in a position to identify abnormal cell development and make a call on whether there is some form of pathology or cancer developing within this particular piece of tissue. So there we have the traditional slides, which require excision of a biopsy. And here we have the exact same tissue sample shown through what we call a digital optical biopsy, because there is no actual biopsy taking place. What happens is that the device scans down through the skin in a vertical slice and takes an image of that slice and shows you what's happening. So this is the exact replication in the LC-OCT image of this particular melanoma on the left-hand side. And then on the right, we have a basal cell carcinoma. This is the histology slide, and this is the LC-OCT slide. So Dami Medical had developed this technology and taken it to the stage of preparation for market launch. And it was a very important stage in the company development, because at this point, some of the researchers had been doing further research on a different approach to the scanning technology. And they were trying to see if they could create perhaps a three-dimensional image of the piece of tissue. So this was an important inflection point in the company's research and product development program. And they had to make a decision. What do we do? Do we run now with our 2D imaging system, which is almost ready to go? Or do we take a step backwards and try and improve the technology and go for the 3D system, which potentially has a lot more commercializable results associated with a 3D version of the technology. And we can take a look at what happens when you do a 3D optical histology. So here we now have the LCOCT 3D optical histology technology that the company developed. And basically what's happening here on the first picture here, I'm showing you a vertical image. So in other words, the probe has scanned down vertically through the tissue, and you can see the epidermis on the top layer and then the dermis here underneath. And then it has taken a second scan, and instead of going down vertically through the tissue, it actually goes horizontally across the width of the tissue. And so the software builds up a stack of vertical images and a stack of horizontal images. And so the researchers discovered that they could actually write a program to bring these two stacks together in a three-dimensional model. So by combining the vertical and the horizontal together, you come up with a 3D image of the actual tissue. So here's a 3D image of normal skin tissue. You can see the depth is down to 500 micrometers, which is where you need to go when you're looking for skin pathologies. And this became a major success with DAME's clinical committee that overviews its research results, does all the evaluation on its technology in the clinic, presents feedback to DAME and tells them how well it's doing and whether it's good enough to actually be beneficial for the dermatologists in skin imaging. And so this received a very good response from their clinical committee, which comprises 6 dermatology hospitals, leading hospitals in the world, and they're based around Europe. So the feedback was excellent for this technology, and it had paid dividends for DAME to actually hold off on going down the route of commercializing the 2D system and investing more funds in taking this technology on to the 3D stage. So from this 3D image, now that you can have more accurate and informative visualization of skin layers, lesions and cells, because you're now looking at the whole morphology of a particular lesion or damage to the skin. Whereas on the 2D systems, which they had developed before, and also on the histology approach, you're always looking at a 2D system. So you're only looking at a very thin slice of the skin in those images. Whereas here you're looking at the complete morphology of the damage, and you can get a much better idea of what's happening. So they're using it to differentiate between different carcinoma types, such as the basal cell carcinoma, the squamous cell carcinoma, and the melanoma. So they had begun with a license from the original inventors. The invention was filed by those 3 organizations that I showed you at the beginning. It was co-owned by the 3 organizations, and when DAME established itself, it licensed the technology from the organization. But since then, it has had to build its intellectual property portfolio as it moves along its roadmap and develops different aspects of the technology and gets closer and closer to commercialization and launching the products in the market. Not only has it built up quite a complete portfolio of patents, but it has also gone on to protect that handheld probe, which I've shown you there, as a design right. So that's a unique design that they have protected. It only protects the design. It doesn't protect any functional aspect. That's the thing about design rights. You only protect the aesthetic appearance of your product. And then it has filed 5 trademarks, which cover its business names and product names. It also has a lot of copyright for the software and database rights and artificial intelligence solutions that it's now using to process and manage the data that's captured from these imaging pictures. And it has a lot of trade secrets built up through its manufacturing processes. So there's some takeaways that we can look at immediately here from the intellectual property portfolio, and that when it was out looking for investors, its intellectual property at the beginning was really the only real asset it had albeit an intellectual asset, but it was the only value in the company. And it paid dividends really in assisting the investors to invest in Dalma, because they did a very extensive due diligence on looking at their intellectual property. And they still, today, every year when they do their reviews of their technologies, and the board sits to discuss where the company is going and key decisions with respect to business strategy and IP strategy, they still review and examine the IP portfolio. So it's a very important aspect of the company's assets. And also, it has teamed up with 2 supply partners for manufacture of the parts. It manufactures the product itself, but it takes different parts of the production from supply partners and then combines them and completes the launch itself on the market. So it requires agreements with these supply partners, obviously, when it's entering into supply manufacturing, and it's very convenient for the company to have this IP protection in place. It avoids any disputes or misunderstandings about who owns what intellectual property. And they make a decision when they partner with companies that they don't enter into any joint developments. They try to avoid at all costs the emergence of joint IP, because that can be a complex thing to deal with. And you can see from my slide here, there are several complementary aspects to the IP portfolio, not just patents, quite a complex IP portfolio. And that, again, is what investors want to see. Here are the timelines, and you can see the company began with the filing of the first patent in 2013. That was actually before the company was established. That was December 2013 when that patent was filed. And then in early 2014, the founders came together to actually start the company. And it's been going then up to 2023. So we're looking at a 10-year span there to where the company is today. You can read this timeline in more detail and see all the different aspects here. On the top side, we have all the business events, key business events, and on the bottom, we have the key IP actions. So I'd encourage you to download the case study and read these things in your leisure. But from my point of view, having interviewed the company and worked with them in terms of developing this case study, some key points stood out for me, which I felt were important things that we should look at. Obviously, the core technology had to be patented, and that was done there just before the end of 2013. Then we had an exclusive license. So without the technology, the company has no assets really. So it was an important aspect in terms of getting an exclusive license to this technology from the 3 partner organizations which owned the technology. Then eventually in 2020, the aspect of licensing the technology came into question, and the company figured it's best really to take full control of the patent, because we can manage it a lot better if we can own this patent. So they sat down and renegotiated rights to the technology and acquired outright the patent in return for equity in the company. At the same time, that 3-dimensional imaging system, which I explained to you, that was also patented at this point, which is a very important patent for the company. And then finally, coming up to the end of 2021, further patents have been filed, which have claims in these patents to artificial intelligence solutions. And the company is now using artificial intelligence to actually capture the data and provide solutions to the dermatologists and users of the technology so that they can manage the data and also use it to interpret the specific visuals that they're seeing in these 3D images, whether they're skin lesions or pathologies or tumors. So that's a very important direction for the company for the future in developing its AI solutions. So for me, some key takeaways are the first patent, which was the first licensed technology, then the third patent, which was the 3D system, and currently the sixth patent, which is incorporating computer implemented inventions using software and technologies combined to protect the technology. So without the first patent, obviously it would have been a difficult decision to entice investors in for funding. So that's a very important patent there and a takeaway. And also in patenting new technologies, because from day one, you can't sit on one patent and hope that you're going to get a product market ready from that. So you have to do several developments. And so along that road path to new product development, you need to be thinking strategically about which aspects of the new technology do we patent and when do we patent them. Then the value of having time to actually make this decision, where it was an important step. Do we run with the two-dimensional system or run with the three-dimensional system? If we go with the three-dimensional system, it's going to take us another year at least to get that up and running and ready for market. So it was very good for them that they actually had sufficient funding and they had some new investment which came in, which in economic terms or financial terms is often termed as the value of patient capital. So this was patient capital. It allowed them to be patient about their decision and wait until they had improved the technology for the 3D system and then come in with a new product on the basis of that. Again, when do we file patent applications? So sometimes if you file too early, your claims might actually not be broad enough to protect the essence of the new product. So it's a balancing situation where you have to make a decision. Do I protect now or do I wait until I have the technology fully developed and understand all the aspects of it and write the claims then to protect everything I need to claim? And as I mentioned, then the sixth patent, my takeaway there is that artificial intelligence is becoming a key topic area now. And in this particular patent, which has only been published 11 days ago, was published on the 5th of May, so it has been secret up to this point. They actually have claims in there which are computer implemented invention claims. So it's an interesting patent to look at from the point of view of how do you protect software in a computer implemented invention. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope I haven't overrun on that.
Thank you very much, John. Very comprehensive indeed. And we see you, Jana, already here, ready to get us started with the update on the unitary patent. But thank you once again, John, and we will see and meet us next week for the individual session and have lots of time to talk a little bit more about questions that we have and aspects of this very interesting case study in detail.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Juliana, get us started, well, or updated, rather.
Thank you very much, Stephanie, and thank you very much, John, for this super interesting presentation. So my name is Juliane Kotzur. I'm a lawyer at the European Patent Office, and I'm really glad that John already stressed the importance of patents in business growth. And I would now like to introduce to you the unitary patent system, which is particularly relevant for this event, as the unitary patent system is largely beneficial for SMEs, startups, and universities, but also for the health sector with its usual IP strategies. This new system will finally start in 2 weeks on the 1st of June. Therefore, it is time for you to get acquainted with it if you have not yet done so. To better understand the upcoming changes, I would like to briefly take a look at Europe's patent system today. So we already have a very successful centralized patent grant procedure at the EPO, but there are some shortcomings in the post-grant phase because the European patent must be validated and maintained individually in each country where it takes effect. The European patent can be basically described as a bundle of national rights. This, as you can imagine, causes high costs and complexity and administrative burdens for users in the post-grant phase, and is especially burdensome for small entities, which usually have less human and financial resources. And in addition, there is no real unified patent judiciary in Europe. Of course, there is the EPO's boards of appeal, and until 9 months after grant, an opposition can be filed with them. But when this period has passed, it is the national courts that exclusively deal with the validity and infringement of both national and European patents. This often results in parallel patent litigation in different member states with different legal regimes and with the risk of divergent national decisions. So the aim of the unitary patent package is to eliminate these shortcomings, mainly through simplification. On the one hand, there is the unitary patent, which supplements the centralized pre-grant procedure, which we already have today, with a centralized post-grant procedure. And the second pillar of the new system is the Unified Patent Court, short form UPC. And it is a common court for the participating member states of the EU and will centralize the litigation for both unitary patents and classic European patents. So on this slide, you can see how the unitary patent system is different from the current system. While the existing application and grant procedure, which you can see on the left-hand side in gray, remains the same as it is for, so to say, classic European patents, the proprietor can, in the post-grant phase, obtain a unitary patent by filing a single request with the EPO. So with this single request, then, one gets unitary patent protection in currently 17 EU member states. And hopefully more EU member states could then still later join the system. Now, especially in the health sector, European patents, as we have them today, are usually validated in a large number of European countries. So for this business area, the unitary patent is especially useful as you get coverage of 17 states in one go, so to say, and for significantly lower costs than before. And I will come to that in a second. After the registration of unitary effect, the EPO will then remain also the only point of contact for the administration of the unitary patent. Again, a substantial simplification. The unitary patent is an attractive option, mainly due to its cost efficiency, which is also linked to the simplification. So on the left-hand side on the slide, you can see some shortcomings of the post-grant administration of the classic European patent, which, as I already said, takes place at national level. So besides potential translation requirements, you need to pay different renewal fees in different currencies and have to observe different deadlines, and you need to hire in each country a local patent attorney. On the 1st of June, with the new system, there will be just one single procedure to obtain unitary patent protection, and then you pay one single fee that is payable to one office, the EPO, in one currency, the euro, at one single deadline. When comparing fees and all associated costs, a unitary patent will on average be less expensive than a classic European patent validated and maintained in 4 countries. Of course, for some businesses, the classic European patent might remain the best option when comparing the costs. And therefore, it is important to note that the unitary patent will complement the existing European patent system and will not replace it. So businesses can still choose to opt for the classic European patent instead. The unitary patent will be beneficial, especially for applicants with limited resources, as many small entities that use patents today tend to rely on national rights due to the high costs and complexities, as I just described. With patent protection in at least 17 EU member states at a relatively low cost, SMEs, but of course also startups and universities, are totally flexible whether and when to scale up and enter new markets, depending on the success of the product or on new business opportunities in other EU markets. So small entities have a better chance to enter the EU internal market and commercialize their technology through a market activity of their own, but also through licensing and cross-licensing. And John already touched upon that. With the broader patent protection, startups can potentially generate a greater revenue, which makes them in return more attractive for venture capital. As a very concrete targeted support measure, EU domiciled small entities can request a compensation for translations costs that were incurred when they filed the European patent application in a non-EPO language that is an official language of the European Union. This request can be made with the request for unitary effect with the EPO. And finally, the reduced cost of litigation before the Unified Patent Court will ensure that access to justice and the enforcement of patent protection will depend less on financial power. And as a targeted measure, the UPC offers a 40% reduction in court fees for small and micro entities, and the court can lower the ceiling of recoverable costs if they would otherwise threaten the economic existence of the unsuccessful party who normally would have to bear these costs. So this concludes my presentation, and I hope that in the limited amount of time I was able to give you just a rough idea of what is coming up in 2 weeks. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hand over to you, Stephanie. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Juliana. Very clear. So thanks again for reminding us of that. I don't see any questions right now, but again, if there are any questions, we will follow up with you separately, and then our experts will try to answer them. So thank you once again, Juliana. And in the interest of time, thank you all for bearing with us. I know we have already exceeded our initial foreseen time. Just very, very briefly, I want to highlight, as mentioned before, there will be upcoming individual training sessions. We're starting with Damer Medical next week, and then move on to OncoCure and OncoMark, as also mentioned by Ilya at the beginning of his speech. All these sessions are very concise 1-hour sessions with a short part dedicated to the actual presentation of the case, and then a larger talking to the expert bit, if you like, where we try to spotlight certain aspects of the case studies more deeply and take a closer look, and you will have the chance to ask questions to the experts that are with me in the room then. So also for you the chance to get some first-hand insights from the people who actually wrote the case study, but also have, of course, extensive experience in the field altogether. So please feel free, you have the link here, you'll get the presentation to join us and register for those individual sessions. I also wanted to highlight the podcast that we did. Adela and I had a conversation on OncoCure once again. And as said, it's one part of the approach that we have, and that together with the European Patent Office and the Academy of the European Patent Office, is to try to come up with as many formats as possible to give you different ways to access these inspiring stories. And for some it might be listening, for some it might be reading. Hopefully, of course, all of you will sort of, make benefit of all these formats that we're offering. But just for you to know, there is a number of podcast episodes also concerning the past series of technology transfer case studies, and you'll find them on the podcast site, but also when you visit the case study page that Ilya mentioned in his presentation, and you go to the individual case study sections, you will find all the material that is there for the different cases, and you'll find the podcast recording there as well. And just very briefly, Ilya mentioned that already, there is the HTB community. It's a growing community on LinkedIn, more than 2,300 followers already. Please have a look and see whether you want to join. We would be happy to welcome you in this community. It's really a very purposeful and purpose-driven community, sharing best practices, sharing training on IP strategy. So lots for you to discover, and there's so much around in terms of material that it really helps you navigate the landscape of what might be useful for you. So I can only invite you to join us here. And then Ilya also mentioned, now I'm sort of jumping through the slides of myself, sorry. Up. So the forums are coming up as well. Again, 3 really interesting topics. I think Ilya mentioned the one on build to sell, but there's another one even closer on the 1st of June on software and patents in MedTech, and another one in November. So really for you to mark your calendars and consider joining those as well. They're great speakers, a great lineup of speakers. There's also an international panel. So again, lots of conversation and firsthand insights from people in the area. So please, if you're free, then join us for those as well. And of course, there's also the regular European IP Helpdesk training calendar. I skipped the page telling you about the European IP Helpdesk. I'm sure many of you are aware, and in any case, you will get the slides, but I just wanted to give you a screenshot of our next upcoming events. As said, there will be on the 25th of May, the one dealing with John, but there's also other sessions coming up, also another cooperation with the EPO on patent protection for EU funding beneficiaries. And with that, thank you once again for joining us today, and keep an eye out for updates on our websites, epo.org/SME or the European IP Helpdesk website. And again, if there's anything that comes to your mind, any question that you would like to have clarified or answered, please contact us. Don't hesitate to send us an email at training@ipohelpdesk.eu, and we will be in touch with the follow-up material to this event. Thank you also very much to our speakers, and wishing you all a lovely afternoon. Goodbye, and I hope to see you soon.